Welcome students. Now we'll learn about asymmetric synthesis. Now before going on to the asymmetric synthesis in detail, let us look what is available in the nature. Nature is asymmetric. That means different enantiomers. Uh, when dealing with stereochemistry, you might have learned that the enantiomers have the same chemical and physical properties, but that is its absolute property. And the biological activity or any other activity showing is this that the chemical and physical properties of both the enantiomers are same are true when you are considering its absolute nature. Uh, but when it is placed in a biological environment, it responds to biological environment in in varied manner. So as you can see, the nature is asymmetric. That means this R enantiomers of limonene, it is a terpenoid of limonene, smells of orange, whereas the S isomer has the smell of lemon. The same chemical but different enantiomers because it is interacting with the uh, in a different manner with the receptors of the olfactory receptors. So therefore, it is having different smells. Similarly, for carbon, the R isomer or the levorotatory, the negative enantiomer, smells of spearmint, whereas the S isomer smells of caraway seeds. Likewise, the androstenone, it's a steroid, it smells of a stale urine, whereas the negative isomer, the levorotatory isomer or the enantiomer of androstenone does not have any smell. All these are enantiomers of each other, and they are uh, interacting with the biological environment in a different manner. So therefore, it is showing different properties. Now, not only the nature is asymmetric, the drugs which we are taking to treat our disease or disorder conditions are also of chiral nature. So for example, levodopa, that is the levorotatory form of the dopamine, is used for treatment of Parkinson's disease, whereas its enantiomer, that is the dextro D-dopa, is toxic. Similar is a case for S-citalopram. No, in this case, the enantiomer, one of the enantiomer, that is S-citalopram, is used as a drug for depression, whereas its R isomer is not having any antidepressant effect. That is, although it is not toxic, it is not showing any activity. So only the S form of the citalopram is showing activity. Now, there is not only you have the enantiomer wherein one is toxic, the other is inactive. Both enantiomers can have varied activities or depending on what biological receptor it is interacting with, such as this is the case observed with the opioid analgesics. Darvone is a painkiller. It is a dextrorotatory enantiomer. It is used as a painkiller, whereas its negative isomer, that is the levorotatory enantiomer, is used as a cough suppressant. So we have seen three cases where one of the enantiomer is toxic, the other is not having a biological activity, and the other wherein it is having a different activity. This means that if you were to have a drug which is having a biological activity, you need a pure enantiomer. How do you do that? Is by synthesizing a pure enantiomer. But when you are doing a laboratory synthesis of a chiral compound, if you are starting with a racemic mixtures, both the compound as a racemic mixture, the result will be a compound. You will not get a pure enantiomer in this case. But if you want to just make one enantiomer, one of the starting materials has to be an enantiomeric pure compound, so that you will have the one of the only one enantiomer being produced here. What is the definition of how will you achieve this is by the means of asymmetric synthesis. You can achieve, that is, this is the process that produces an optically active compound from the symmetrically constituted molecules without requiring resolution of a racemic mixture. It is also a method of preparation of chemical compound which aims to bias the synthesis in favor of producing one stereoisomer over the another. Therefore, there is always a bias in this. That is, asymmetric means there is a bias of producing one stereoisomer over the another. What are the different methods in this case? Enantiopure separation, that is resolution, using chiral pool, using chiral auxiliaries, using chiral reagents or catalyst. Okay, we'll see all this in detail now. How, although the definition mentions it as without requiring a resolution of racemic mixture, that means the end product. However, the resolution itself is a asymmetric synthesis. It can be one of the method of asymmetric synthesis, which we'll see now. So first method is enantiomer separation by resolution. Now, resolution requires, as we have seen in the stereochemistry video, that is a resolution. One of the method of resolutions is by forming salt, by forming derivatives, by chiral chromatography, or by enzymatic resolution. So in all this, apart from the enzymatic, you require one pure resolving agent. One of the condition is that either for the salt formation or the diastereomer derivative formation, you require one enantiomeric pure resolving agent. So, let us look at an example wherein you have a racemic mixture of this amino acid in this case. Now, the resolving agent in this case is the ephedrine, the levorotatory ephedrine, that is 1R2S ephedrine. When you form a salt of this, what happens is that one of the enantiomer, that is, it forms a crystalline salt, and the other enantiomer remains in the solution. That means one has higher solubility, one has lower solubility. And when you hydrolyze this again with using an acid, hydrolyze this salt or acidify this salt with an acid, you will recover the single enantiomer again. So you started with a racemic mixture, you formed diastereomic salt in this case with the resolving agent, which is ephedrine. Now, what happens is that one of the diastereomic salt in this case is a crystalline salt, which can be filtered, and then it is hydrolyzed. Hydrolyzed in the sense it is acidified because you are having an acidic salt. So when you add acid, it will precipitate out in the acidic condition, and thus will get the single enantiomer being recovered. Now, the major disadvantage of this is you are straight away getting 50% yield. Remember, the racemic mixture is a 50-50 ratio of both the enantiomers. So when you are resolving one of the enantiomer, the other enantiomer is in the 50% ratio. But this also is an advantage that you can, in one method, you can isolate both the enantiomers. But in this case, if you are getting this as the R enantiomer, okay, the other S enantiomer will be in the solution form, which you can evaporate and again uh, uh, which can be obtained by evaporation of the solvent, and again after acidification you will get the individual uh, enantiomer. So the advantage here is that you get both the isomers, but you get 50-50%. If you are not interested in the other, you are straight away losing the 50% yield of the reaction. But uh, in most cases, you want to test both the enantiomers against a biological target. So, in by using this resolution method, you can check both the activity of both the enantiomers, because you are having one of the enantiomer in the crystalline form, the other in the solution form. So, you can easily extract that other enantiomer which is there in solution form and test both these enantiomers for biological activity and see if there is any varying activity or differential activity or altogether a different activity, as we have seen in the case of chiral drugs. There is one more example. BiNAP, we have seen BiNAP is a chiral compound without a stereogenic center. It is owing to the nature of restricted rotation of this particular bond here. So how do you resolve this BiNAP is in its synthesis process itself, it is resolved. First, you start with racemic dibromide of this binaptyl compound. Then you form this phosphine oxide. This phosphine oxide is again a racemic. You have both the, so what you do, this is one another method wherein you are not forming a salt, neither forming a derivative, you forming a co-crystal. Now this racemic mixture, uh, so the S binap which is there co-crystallizes with this dioxybenzoyl L-tartrate. This is again the resolving agent. So S isomer of the binap is having co-crystals, forms the co-crystals with this. So you can usually filter it out such that the R phosphine oxide remains in uh, the solution. When you add a base to the solution, what it does is it releases the pure R phosphine oxide, which is then reduced using this silane compound, trichlorosilane compound, to get the pure R binap. Similarly, for the crystalline, you again do the same thing after you filter this co-crystal of phosphine oxide of S binap, to follow the same step, add base and then reduce it to phosphine compound from the phosphine oxide to phosphine compound, and you get the S binap. Remember how to remember this is an S binap. It is again a non-chemistry logic here. The wedge-shaped bond which are there in the structure are in the form of S. Are in the form of S. Now the second method is asymmetric synthesis using a chiral pool. What is a chiral pool? That means in nature you have chiral compounds readily available, such as the S-alanine, S-valine, S-vinylalanine, S-proline, S-serine, S-aspartic acid, and S-glutamic acid. Okay. Although all the amino acids are available in a pure, one of the pure form. So enantiomerically pure form, when I say pure, it is enantiomerically pure. So in nature, there is a pool of compounds which are of chiral nature and are obtained in enantiomeric pure form. So this is a chiral pool. So what you do is, using this chiral pool, you are starting taking advantage of this chiral pool and making enantiomeric pure compounds. Such that an example of this is when you reduce the amino acid to amino alcohol with using borane, and by treating the reaction mixture with sodium borohydride with sulfuric acid, or can use this borane as such, or you can use this sodium borohydride plus concentrated H2SO4, will result in the same borane type of thing. You will get an amino alcohol. You are reducing the carboxyl here to alcohol. So by using readily available enantiomeric pure compound, you are giving or getting the synthesis of this amino alcohol by using this particular reagents. Uh, Although you can synthesize amino alcohols, there are many amino alcohols such as ephedrine, which is readily available. It is a plant extract readily available as either diastereomer. You can have this diastereomer or the other diastereomer, and also the individual enantiomers are also present. So you have levorotatory and dextrorotatory ephedrine. Then you have something called as pseudoephedrine, dextrorotatory pseudoephedrine, and levorotatory pseudoephedrine. So you have four enantiomers and two diastereomers readily available. You don't have to synthesize this. It is readily available in the nature. You have just to extract it from a certain natural source here. You can always synthesize this by using chiral starting metal, which is again readily available in the nature. One more example is one you have seen is formation of amino alcohol in the earlier slide. This is the formation of an hydroxy acids. For this, you start with the S-leucine, levorotatory leucine in this case, and this is occurring via a double inversion and with overall retention. So if you are starting with S isomer here, in the once you diazotize this using this nitrous acid, which is formed in situ by the reaction of sodium nitrite and concentrated HCl to form a diazonin salt of this primary amine group. Now there is the formation of epoxide ring. Now during this formation of epoxide ring, there is inversion taking place. This is again an SN2 mechanism. Now, hydrolysis of this epoxide ring or the ring opening by water is again an SN2 step. So there is one more inversion. So you are having one inversion step here and the other inversion. So there is a double inversion. Therefore, it is overall retention in this case. So when you open this ring by use of water, you get the hydroxide in this case. So you are forming an hydroxy acid. Now, this is example wherein you have synthesized an hydroxy acid using an amino acid. However, there are some hydroxy acids which are readily available. S-lactic acid, both the forms of S and R lactic acid are made from bacterial fermentation, whereas the mandelic, malic, and both the isomers of tartric are extracted from almonds, apples, and grapes respectively. So that means you get mandelic from almonds, malic from apples, and tartric from grapes. Uh, uh, Instead of amino acids as the chiral pool, you have a lot of sugars in the chiral pool. That is one of the example here is D-mannose, which is there. When you reduce this D-mannose to get a D-mannitol, which is having a C2 symmetry along this axis. This is the axis of symmetry, C2 axis. Now, when you protect this by forming an acetal with the acetone, to get acetal or a diacetyl of this mannitol, and since this is a dihydroxy compound, you can do periodate cleavage using sodium periodate You will cleave this and you get two molecules of protected form of diacid by uh, you get protected form of the glyceraldehyde in this case. This is the S-glyceraldehyde. So oxidation using per-iodide cleavage to get two molecules of this is cleaved along this particular bond, and you get the protected form of S-glyceraldehyde. So when you hydrolyze this acetal, you will get back the S form of the glyceraldehyde. So in this, what you are taking in asymmetric synthesis using chiral pool is you have readily available chiral molecules which you are using as a starting material to get a enantiomerically pure compound. Now this is an example of ipsenol. Now this is an insect hormone. If you observe this structure of the levorotatory form or the S isomer of ipsenol, or in general the ipsenol, it is having a structural similarity with the leucine. This portion is the derivative of the leucine. You are starting, this is the leucine side chain in this case, and you are forming a hydroxy acid of that leucine. And when you combine with a Grignard reagent, you get the ipsenol. We'll see the synthesis of this particular enantiomer, the S enantiomer of ipsenol. So to start with the hydroxy acids, which we have said in the previous slide, how do you form the hydroxy acids from the amino acid? In this case, the hydroxy acid, this is the hydroxy acid of the S-leucine. Now this is protected, for this oxygen is protected using tetrahydropyran. This is the common protecting agent which is used for protection of a hydroxy group. So this is protected, then this is reduced, then this is esterified by using any alcohol in this case. And when you are reducing this particular ester using an hydride source, which is lithium aluminum hydride, get the protected form of the this intermediate, which is a diol. When you when this is reacted with particular hydroxy, this protected form of the dihydroxy, wherein one of the hydroxy is protected with tetrahydrofuran, you are esterifying it with tosyl chloride. Okay. And when you add, when you have this tosyl ring, it is you are introducing this a good living group. What will happen? It will form an epoxide. This is forming an epoxide, and the attack of this Grignard reagent. Okay, this is the Grignard reagent on the epoxide will give you the S-ipsenol in this case. The reduction of the acid via the ester then allows the introduction of tosylate group, which is a good living group, which is displaced to make an epoxide, and this epoxide ring is then opened using a Grignard reagent to introduce the diene portion of the and give the target molecule. You are introducing the diene via the Grignard reagent, which is from a diene in this case. So as you've seen that, so for this asymmetric synthesis using a chiral pool, you modify the procedure of your synthesis such that you are starting with the a chiral structure which is similar to the end product. So there is some structural similarity between the target molecule and this starting material. So you modify the procedure as such that you go back, this is reverse engineering, you go back to the starting material such that you are getting the the chirality from the starting material. In this case, this particular part of the S-spinol is similar to the S-leucine. So the chirality of this particular S-enantiomer that is there is also coming from the S-enantiomer of the leucine. So next we see the method of asymmetric synthesis using chiral auxiliaries. How asymmetric synthesis using chiral pool rely on the fact that the structure of the chiral pool of the starting material is still there in the product. As you have seen in the synthesis of isphenol, that is, it is having the structure which is of the starting material, that is the hydroxy acid of the S-leucine. Some part of the structure is still there. But the same idea can work even if the static chiral compound is no longer the part of the target you are making. That means the end product will not have the some part of the structure of the starting material. That means you are not making use of a chiral pool in this case. You are making a use of something called as a chiral auxiliary. So this chiral auxiliary will introduce the required stereogenic center or required chirality in the molecule and will not be part of the end product which is there. So one of the example of this asymmetric synthesis using chiral auxiliaries is Diels-Alder reaction. What is a Diels-Alder reaction? It is a reaction of a diene and a dienophile. So, but if you are having a chiral dienophile in this case, how this is a chiral dienophile you're forming using acetate chloride and benzyl alcohol, you'll get a chiral dienophile in this case and a chiral diene. So this does not have any chirality. But however, this can attack from either the diene can attack the dienophile from the top face of the dienophile in this case, and you will get this particular enantiomer, and attack from the bottom face of diene or attack of the diene to the bottom face of dienophile in this case will generate this particular enantiomer, and this both are formed in 50-50%. Although you get only the one diastereomer. When I say diastereomer, that is, this is endo. Exo would have been, that is, this carbonyl will be away from the bridge atom in this case. So it will be this carbonyl group will be at equatorial position. If you were to consider this as a cyclohexane ring, this is an axial position. The O-benzyl benzyl group would have been at the equatorial position, but that is not formed in this case. You are getting only one diastereomer, but you are getting two different enantiomers of that particular diastereomer in this case. So if you are interested of only one of the enantiomer, how to proceed? This is done using something called as Evans oxazolidinone. Okay, how you make this oxazolidinone? Is this is the oxazolidinone, and this is the chiral auxiliary we are talking. So by reaction of this oxazolidinone to your dienophile, in this case, you are forming a chiral benzyl ester or a chiral dienophile in this case. In earlier case, this dienophile was an achiral dienophile. That means it does not have any chirality in this case because this is a planar molecule. But in this case, this is a chiral benzyl ester. Replace the achiral benzyl ester with an this is called as an Evans oxazolidinone. This is an oxazole which is saturated, therefore this is oxazolidine, and you are having a carbonyl So it is oxazolidinone. So this particular thing is called as Evans oxazolidinone. So how you make this is start with valine, which is again available in the chiral pool. This you have seen the formation of amino alcohol by using borane. So we have seen in the previous slides. When you form, how do you form this particular oxazolidinone is by use of diethyl carbonate in presence of base. You get this particular chiral auxiliary in this case. And when you esterify this form amide, not esterify, form an amide with this particular acid chloride of the dienophile, you get a chiral dienophile. Now, there is this particular phase of double bond is not equivalent. There are, because of the chiral center, the diene now can distinguish between the upper surface of the diene and the lower surface of the diene, or the upper face of the diene and the lower face of the diene. So when you carry out this Diels-Alder reaction in presence of a Lewis acid such as diethyl aluminum chloride, you can see the green part in this diene, chiral diene, is the chiral auxiliary. This is the Evans oxazolidinone. Now, it first forms complex with this Lewis acid. Now, as a result of this, this molecule is particularly strained such that this entire thing is a planar structure. However, the bottom face of this diene, the bottom face of the diene is shielded from the attack of the cyclopentadiene in this case because of this particular isopropyl group, which is oriented such that it is below this entire plane. Now remember, this is entirely or sort of a planar molecule. That means all this are in one plane. The aluminum, this oxygen, this nitrogen, this oxygen, this carbon, and this carbon, and the dienophile portion is in one plane, and this is below the plane of this isopropyl group is this below the plane of this entire structure. Because of this, which is below the plane, the bottom face of dienophile is hindered from the attack of the diene, in this case cyclopentadiene. As a result, it can attack only from the top portion, and you result in this particular diene only one diastereomer form possible, that is the endoform. However, you get only the one enantiomer in this case. One next step is to remove the chiral auxiliary from the product by treating with a nucleophile, and you get this single enantiomer of that particular product. And this chiral auxiliary can be recovered and recycled. So as you can see, the distinguishing factor is that the chirality is introduced, or chirality is maintained, or you are getting an enantiomeric pure compound by this using chiral auxiliary, which is not the part of the final structure, in the case, as opposed to the chiral pool, wherein the some part of the structure is coming from the chiral pool starting material, but in case of chiral auxiliary, this is not part of the final target molecule in this case, although you are getting the single enantiomer. Therefore, this is called as an chiral auxiliary. Now, let us look at this in a better 3D interactive manner. So, what I will do, I will click this hyperlink here. It will take me to the chiral this browser window. Now, what I explain is look at this structure which is there. Now, this aluminum complex is forming a strained molecule such that it is all this are in one plane. Okay, and this isopropyl group which is there is bottom of the plane. As a result, the cyclopentadiene cannot attack because of this steric bulk here, cannot attack from the bottom face of the dienophile. In this case, it can only attack from the top face, and this is how it is forming this. It is way to the animation to start, and you can see how this is forming the cyclopentadiene deals under adapt in this case. So this is the intermediate. Because of presence of this isopropyl group here, which is below the plane of this entire complex which is formed. Okay. This is the cis form of this. Now the transform of this particular structure. Okay. This is the cis form. A transform wherein this particular diene is oriented towards here is disfavored because of crowding here. Only one type of dienophile or the one type of we are seeing it in the cis form, not the trans form. So this is and this is trans, wherein carbonyl and double bond are opposite ends, and this carbonyl and double bond are at the same end. Okay, so this is how your the dienophile is attacking from the top face, such that you are getting only one of the enantiomer of the diastereomer which is formed. In this case, there is the endodiastereomer which is formed. Now we'll return back to the slide here. Now this was the method if you want to have this particular enantiomer. You have seen in the first slide of the Diels-Alder reaction, that is, it is possible to get both the enantiomers. So if you are interested in the other enantiomer in this case, what will you do? The simple logic would be form the Evans oxoridone using R-valine. However, I said this is available in nature, so it is readily available. So if you want to use R-valine to synthesize the R-valine, which is quite expensive. R-valine is quite expensive, therefore norepinephrine. Now, this is an example. This is an interesting example wherein the you are using a norepinephrine in this case, which gives the opposite enantiomer than obtained in the previous reaction. How this is forming? Again, you are forming an oxazolidinone by using of a this is again diethyl carbonate. You forming the oxazolidinone and then esterifying with or not the esterification. This is an amide bond which is formed between the dienophile. Now, in this case, the top face of the dienophile, the top face of the again bonding with aluminium, the formation of molecular complex with aluminium uh, is having this entire thing in the one plane. This particular dienophile and the carbonyl here, this oxygen, this nitrogen, this oxygen, this carbon, and this carbon are in one plane. However, now the top face is shielded because of the orientation of this methyl and phenyl ring. In earlier case, the isopropyl ring was below the plane of this particular complex. This particular complex. Now both this phenyl and methyl group are above the plane of this. So the top face is now shielded, or shielded in the sense there is steric hindrance of attack. So cyclopentadiene must attack on the bottom face. So you'll end up getting this particular enantiomer. Again, the diastereomer which is formed is an endodiastereomer, that is the carbonyl is towards the bridge atom. That is, this is the axial bond. When you hydrolyze this using a base and esterifying with the benzyl ester in this case, you will get back the opposite enantiomer in this case. And the chiral auxiliary which is recovered can be recycled and used in the next reaction. So we have seen the formation of Diels-Alder reaction, wherein you are using the Evans oxazolidinone and the pseudo oxazolidinone obtained from the norepinephrine. So norepinephrine you are getting one enantiomer, and using S-valine you are getting other enantiomer. The another example here for using asymmetric using chiral auxiliaries is alkylation of enolates. Again, in this case, you are making use of Evans oxazolidinone can be turned into enolizable carboxylic acid derivatives. So first, you are again forming the amide here of this particular acid chloride. Then you are forming the enolate of this particular carbonyl here, carboxytone here, by use of lithium. So this is cis enolate, wherein this is cis enolate. But trans enolate is too hindered in this case because of the steric hindrance here, you can see. So only the cis enolate will be formed. Now this coordination with the metal, as in case of earlier example where we have seen the aluminum is the complexing metal. In this case, the lithium is such that it is again this entire thing is a planar structure or almost planar. When I say planar, it is almost planar. The next, this is quite a strained and rigid structure fixing the isopropyl group, this isopropyl group back of the molecule. So the electrophile can only attack the top face of the enolate, as in the earlier or the first case of the Diels-Alder reaction. This is similar to the Diels-Alder reaction, wherein the attack was on the top face of the dienophile. Now in this case, the attack of the electrophile is on the top face of the enolate here. The bottom phase, as you can see, is shielded by this isopropyl group here. So when this particular electrophile is attacking, it is attacking from the above the plane. Therefore, this bond, which is a solid base, is towards you, that is above the plane of the paper. And although you may still get a minor diastereomer, wherein this is below the plane of the paper in this case, or below the plane of this. This is a versatile reaction, that is, you can use for variety of alkyl halides here, such as benzyl halide, allyl halide, and ethyl halide, ethyl iodide in this case. However, you can see the diastereomic ratio which is obtained. It is for this benzyl, it is 99:1, 98:2. That means this diastereomer is formed in the 98%, and this is formed in 2%. If it is this R is ethyl, it is formed in 94% and 6%. So you are losing 6% of the yield because of the formation of this minor diastereomer which is there. Now this is the major disadvantage here, because if you calculate the enantiomeric excess, this will be 94 minus 6 will be 88% enantiomeric excess of this particular major atom. So you are losing quite of amount of other enantiomer in this case, not getting the 99%. Only one some of the substituents here in this case is having the diastereomic ratio of 99:1. So the enantiomeric excess is in this case will be 98. In this case it will be 96, and in this case it is 88. So this is the major disadvantage, that the enantiomeric excess is on the lower side. The last example of the asymmetric synthesis using chiral auxiliaries is chiral auxiliary control aldol reaction. It is also called as the Evans aldol. Now, what is an aldol reaction? Is the addition of an enolate to an electrophile, wherein the electrophile is an aldehyde or a ketone. So, as you can see here, this is the enol which is formed by the boron, and you get 95% yield. So in this case, what you do is combine this enol which is there with a chiral auxiliary. Again, this is a Evans oxazolidinone amide, and you are forming an by use of this particular reagent and this particular base, and the aldehyde is the electrophile, benzaldehyde is the electrophile. In the case, you are getting a single enantiomer and single diastereomer plus the auxiliary. We will see this exact reaction in much more detail now. Now, combination of triethylamine and boron triplet forms combination of this boron triplet. Triplet is you are having two substance of the boron with an butyl group, whereas one of the group substituent is the triplet group here, in this case trifluoromethyl oxysulfonyl in this case. In this case, it has to form cis enolate, because again the trans version will be steric hindered. So you are having one of the this thing, it is formed cis here, and this oxygen, how this complex is forming is this oxygen donates into the empty p orbital of boron. Now remember, boranes are Lewis acid based. They can accept a pair of electrons by having an empty p orbital. So the oxygen donates into this. However, this OB coordination is weak and is broken when you add an aldehyde here. Now, when this aldehyde is attacking, it has to attack from certain phase of this particular enol here. This particular phase, it has to attack from the top phase. This this bond is free to rotate. What happens is that this free to rotate, you rotate the brown bond in this case, you are getting this particular type of intermediate in this case. Now this, when you add, first the coordination of this aldehyde has to occur. Now coordination of aldehyde with the boron occurs, that is the carbon and oxygen coordinates with the boron here, and because boron cannot be pentavalent, so this OB bond, which is a slightly weaker bond, is broken, has to break, and this boron coordinates with the aldehyde instead. Okay. Now this attack of the aldehyde has to occur from the front face of the auxiliary. In this case, that is the front face, the attack has to occur, as you have seen. And it does so by forming a 6-membered ring, a cyclohexane type of chair conformation. chair-like cyclic. This is called as Zimmermann-Taxler transition state, which allows the attack uh, enolate to attack the aldehyde while simultaneously transferring the metal here from the boron to from the here the boron, which is what is the metal, the boron from the enolate oxygen, from the enolate oxygen. This particular is the enolate oxygen onto the new hydroxyl group, which is being which will be forming after the hydrolysis. So this particular arrangement gives only one type of isomer in this case. Why this attack has to occur on the front side? Again, the reason is of this particular bulk which is there, which is on the lower side of the this particular oxazolidone cannot attack from the this thing lower phase of the enolate because of the steric hindrance here. It has to attack only from the upper phase of this enolate, and this is done so by forming this particular. This is, if we see, this is a chair-like cyclohexene chair-like conformation, wherein methyl is in the pseudo-axial position, pseudo-axial, because this is not exactly a cyclohexane, therefore it is called as pseudo-axial. And R group is chooses to be equatorial. Such arrangement which is there, which results in the one particular enantiomer. When you redraw this, you get one particular enantiomer in this case. So let us look at a slightly interactive 3D animation again here. So now we'll go to the browser window after I click this hyperlink. Now I'll be sharing the browser window here. As you can see here, the aldehyde has to attack from the front face of the this is the aldehyde, this particular molecule which you are seeing in the browser window. This is the aldehyde. In this case, you are showing acetaldehyde. The example was with the benzaldehyde. This has to attack from this face because this face is sterically hindered by the presence of this. Okay. So what is happening in this case is formation of this particular intermediate, a cyclohexane intermediate. First, let us look at this particular thing, how the electrons are moving around. You can see this oxygen again donates into the empty p orbital of the boron here, with simultaneous breaking of this particular bond with the enolate here. Which forms this particular intermediate, which is a chair-like cyclohexane molecule. As you can see, this is the chair-like. Now the methyl group, which was there, is in pseudo-equatorial position. The R group, in the sense, the R group of the is in the pseudo-equatorial position. And then you result, when you break, transfers the boron from the enolate to the oxygen here. there is transfer of the boron from this enolate to the oxygen, which will form the hydroxy here. So you'll get an aldol, aldol which is an aldehyde plus an alcohol, which is an aldol. When you redraw this, when you redraw in your RNS thing, you will get such type of structure. Okay, this is R isomer and this is S isomer. When you hydrolyze this, or when you do workup of the reaction, you will get back the hydroxy here. This is how after workup you get, this is a same product. That means both the substituents are both the substituents are on the same side of the double bond. Both these are same side of this double bond. This particular methyl group and this particular this thing is in the same orientation. I'll return back to the slide now. So this completes with our two methods or the three methods of the asymmetric synthesis. That is, we have first looked at the resolution method, wherein the yield is 50-50%, but the advantage that you get both the enantiomers so that you can test them biologically separately. The second method was using chiral pool, wherein the target molecule has the parent chiral structure and it is too lengthy. One of the disadvantages is it is too lengthy process. You have to modify the procedure such that you're having the to make use of the chiral pool molecule, you have to use that particular molecule should have some similarities. So you have to modify the entire procedure such that it is a type of reverse engineering to do, and it is mostly a lengthy first you have to introduce the this thing. Again, the next method is using a chiral auxiliary, wherein the target molecule does not have the stepping chiral pool structure, which is called the chiral auxiliary. Again, this is a lengthy procedure, and the enantiomeric excess is also on the lower side in this case. So in the next video, we'll go through with the other, the last method of asymmetric synthesis, that is asymmetric using chiral catalyst.